This roof latch is out of an E46. It's an 03 330 Ci. 36s are probably the same, but I wouldn't swear it in court. There's a double start Acme thread going through it that runs that block back and forth via that electric motor, and the flex shafts that are attached, go between the electric motor and this thing. They're splined on the end. It runs that back and forth, and it runs that rod back and forth, and it puts weight or puts pressure on the. It's a Rube Goldberg setup, is what it is, and it mashes that cam down so the lock over centers and it rolls over and latches your roof. It's a crappy design. I don't know why they made it out of plastic except to make it quiet, maybe, but it is what it is, and that plastic fails, and yours is going to fail too. I guarantee it. They all do, eventually. I used brass to make some. I've seen this fix somewhere on the web where somebody used bolts and nuts down in there. I didn't like the nut idea because it's too centralized. This piece of brass or whatever you choose to use has more of a bearing surface, and it'll do the same things the nut, only better, because it spreads that pressure out over the width of that block, I guess is how I'm trying to say it. So I just had some scrap brass and threaded at 1/4 20. I didn't locate my holes as good as I could have, but lesson learned. Do yours better. When you get all the work done that I'm about to show you how to do, this is important. And whether you take these mechanisms out and do it on a bench or you do it while it's still on the car, which is what I'm going to show you how to do, make sure you take the flex shaft while it's attached to this mechanism right there. You'll see a spline shaft. Hook it up to that and detach it from the end where it hooks to the motor. There's that spline shaft. And run both of those, just twist it, turn it, till those locks are in the full open position on both sides. Start them both independently and make sure they're at the full open position, and then hook them back up to the motor. That way they'll be synced, and because if you don't do that, one will try to close before the other one, and it's a timed event, and if it's not right, it won't work, and your roof won't latch. And it's just a piece of junk, and they should have never made it that way. That's the fix. This metal cover, it's got screws across the leading edge of it. They're number 10 Torx. They've already been taken out. Those other black things you see in there are just like a stud, a locator, or whatever you want to call it. There's a stud on each corner with a nut on it covered up by a rubber cap. Just peel that rubber cap off with your fingernails or stick a knife blade under it and just pop it off. I'm kind of holding my camera up with one hand, and actually it's a phone, and looking for it with my other eye, trying to find this thing in a cup holder with a bunch of screws in it so I can show you what I'm talking about. And it just keeps the end of that stud covered up so it doesn't cut your seal along the top of your windshield when the lid is closed. Here that is. There's a flat piece of metal on the end of your headliner with one Phillips head screw in it. Sometimes that little flat, it looks like a big square washer is really all it is. And sometimes it'll stick to the headliner, sometimes it won't. Here's your window sill. There's 2 number 30 Torx screws in it. You stick a paint scraper or spatula or whatever, putty knife, and get in that seal and pry it like that. You'll see it. Just loosen it up until it's loose and flopping around. Don't pull it out of there. You don't need to. It's a pain in the butt to get it back in through that seal. You'll see why in a minute when I pull this down. Okay, here's why you don't want to pull the screws out, put them in your pocket or whatever. They'll hang just like that. And this, to warn you, this seal is one piece from this window sill all the way across the leading edge of the, or front of the roof to your other window sill. There's nothing attaching it to that metal cover. The front lip of that metal cover is, well, that's what holds this seal on there. It just fits over the top of it like an edge seal. And when you get this loose all the way, there's a screw right underneath there that I'm going to show you in a minute. I forgot to take it off, and I was trying to pry on this like an idiot. Anyway, I'm showing you right here, you got to reach inside the headliner, and there's 6 screws that go across the back of that end up in the back side of that metal cover I'm hanging on to right there in that video. And the holes in the back side of that cover, they're not holes, they're just shaped like a U. It's a cutout like a U, so it'll slide. You just loosen these up about 2 or 3 turns, if that much, and just to get the tension off of them. And once you get the screws, the number 10 torque screws out of the leading edge of that metal cover, that'll just slide right down. That's what keeps that headliner intact and in place. The first time I did this, I took all those out, didn't know any better, and made a lot more work for myself. So here I'm showing you just to loosen them up. And it's kind of tight in there, so they're number 20 torques. Just to use whatever tool you can and adapt and overcome. There you go. There's another number 20 torques screw. Don't do what I'm doing until you get this screw out. I'll show you that in a minute. But once I get this screw out that I missed, and I'll show you in a second, this will just pop right off. And then it's really the safest thing to do to wait till you get that whole cover off laying in your hand before you try to peel this. I mean, you can do it, but it's a lot safer to take the whole thing off and then take that seal off, because it's too easy to rip. Now this has got a little rip in it, I think. It may have, I got the car that way. I didn't just rip it when you see me pull this off, but it's not going to hurt anything. But if you get careless here, because of the sharp angles and pockets that are in this molded rubber seal, if you just try to jerk that thing off of there, you're going to rip it. And, well, if you've ever been to a BMW dealership parts counter, you know why you don't want to do that. So I'm just going to talk over this whole thing. That little tear right there was there the first time I did it. And whatever. I didn't do it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Here's that screw I forgot to take off, like a bonehead. And I should have waited till I got that out. There's one on each side, number 20 torques. And I should have waited till I got that off before I tried to peel that seal off. But I'd done it before, so I knew what I could get away with. But this is the right way to do it. Take that out first. Take this whole panel off. It'll drop right off in your hand now if you've got these screws in the back loose enough. You pop that right off of there. Lay it down somewhere on a bench or out of your way, and then peel your seal off there. Or you don't even have to take the seal off. Really, you could just leave it all dangling there. But if you, like us, you don't have anywhere to put it except across there or laying across the hood. Well, I don't want the seals, the doggone it. I'll tell you in a minute. The corner is wrapped around those 2 sharp areas, and it's just a stamped piece of sheet metal. It's not really deburred or anything, and it can cut that rubber quite easily if you don't do it right when you're taking it off. So my advice is not even to take the thing off to begin with. Just drop the dang thing off and just let those window seals hang right there, and lay that someplace where nothing can bump it or rip them off, because it's quite a bit of weight dangling off that corner, and it's just asking to get cut. Here I'm showing you what it looks like under there. There's your mechanism and your motor in the middle. It's got a flex shaft, and it's got splined ends on it. They're real easy to come out. You'll see a clip there. You just flex that thing, and it'll pop right off with the end. If you're going to take this out to do it on a bench, originally I was going to show how to take this whole mess out, but there's other videos that show that. They're not going to redo it here. But there's 4 bolts that hold this thing in. Right there, and And you got to take a couple of bolts out on the front of that frame right there. There's a spacer in the middle, and right here I was filming it and I decided that I wasn't going to take this out. And there's an E-clip. You got to take off that gas cylinder right there, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to snake out of there. But like I say, there's other videos on YouTube that show how to do that. I decided I wasn't going to show it, and I just went to another section. Okay, here's a couple of pieces of, they're just weldable steel. You can buy it in 3-foot lengths in Home Depot or Tractor Supply or Lowe's. Anybody's got it. And 3/4 was the narrowest I could find. I couldn't find 1/2 inch, and that would have been better. But I had to machine some edge. There's nothing I've done here that you can't do with a vise and a file or a hacksaw. But I just happen to have machine tools and I can make this stuff go by a little quicker. And the reason that little step is on there to fit, that hole gets narrower as you go down deeper. That's why it's stepped like that. That's the first one I did, and I didn't know where the holes that are already in that bar that my thumb is laying against there that go through this plastic block. I didn't know where they were. There's two holes in it, so that when this thing is molded in there, that rubber or plastic is molded around it, it kind of keeps it from sliding off the end. But you need to drill through the middle of that span where this little rectangular slots are. If I had it to do over, in fact, I redid the other ones on the car. This will just be a spare. The ones on the car aren't broke completely in two like this one was, but they will be before long. So I fixed them, and they're good to go. All I had was some brass the size I wanted, and I went to Home Depot and got some steel because brass is hard to find. And anyway, as we go through this, like that hole there should have been a little further to the right, because that necessitated me filing a couple of corners off of that, a couple of flat spots on that washer. I'm trying to eliminate as much as I can, showing people how to do this to fix their mechanism. It's a pain in the butt enough as it is without adding to it, so I'm trying to simplify it as much as I can. Next thing I'm going to do is come to your car, get this thing in a comfortable position where the hydraulics are going to bleed off. If you lift it up like this, the hydraulics are going to bleed off, and it'll eventually come down about right here, but do it where you want. But what you want to do is measure from this edge right here up that way towards its base 9/16 of an inch and put a scribe mark. That's what these marks are right here. See that mark? That's a scribe mark. Now what you want to do is get into the center of it, and I'll put a drill start in it and I'll show you what I'm talking about. The best thing to do is start with if you don't have a center drill like this, just start with a 1/16 inch bit or something really small, and make sure you get right in the middle. I'll show you what I mean. Hold your nut blank up into that recess with a stepped side toward the back of the car, and drill your number 8 hole through that block, and it'll put a drill start in there, that little nick you saw, so you know where to drill through and thread it later. Here's the hardware you should have getting ready to install it. There's your 2 pieces of metal, threaded 1/4 Take a 1/4 inch drill bit and upsize those number 8 holes you've got in that plastic. Just go through it to where the nuts go. Don't go where the big acme thread is. You'll screw it up. Once you've done a dry fit, put a drop of blue Loctite. Don't use red, use blue. Just 1 drop on the end, and that's all you need. Put it in there, screw it down tight, and you're done.